My brothers and sisters, welcome to episode number 93 in the book of Genesis. We're going to look today at a characteristic of God about his thoroughness in his assessment, his thoroughness in his judgment. The context is he's been visiting with Abraham and Sarah. God has come down with two angels and he is visiting them. And the great part of the story is he says, hey, you're going to have a baby. In 1814, he says, is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time, I will return to you about this time next year, and Sarah shall have a son. And they laugh. They kind of make a bad response, but that's beside the point for today. So God is going to keep this covenant with this very imperfect Abraham for the good of all mankind. And so you see that we have a God regarding sin, and who says regarding sin, I've heard and I'm going to see it and I'm going to go down, I'm going to assess it, I'm going to set out, I'm going to visit, and I will know whether you have sin or not. So that's in our story today. So one of the questions the Lord is asking out loud for our benefit, I think, is should I show Abraham what I must do with sin? Should I show Abraham why his covenantal family is so critical to every family because of this consequence of sin? So watch what happens here in the story in Genesis chapter 18, starting in verse 16. Then the men, which is the Lord and two angels, set out from there, and they looked down towards Sodom. It's about 50 miles away from where they are. And Abram went with them to set them on their way. The Lord said, shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do? Seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. Let me just pause there. So the Lord is saying through this conduit of one family is the conduit of blessing for all families. Back to the verse now, verse 19. For I have chosen him that he may command his children and his household after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing righteousness and justice, so that the Lord may bring to Abraham what he has promised him. So the Lord, let me pause again. The Lord is speaking as if this covenant is conditional on the good behavior of Abraham, which I think is hilarious because Abraham doesn't even make it out of chapter 18 alone. One single chapter as a righteous and perfect a person. He doesn't even make it out of chapter 18 unscathed by non-righteousness. Back to the story, verse 20. Then the Lord said, because the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and their sin is very grave, I will go down to see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry that has come to me. And if not, I will know it. So the Lord and two angels set out from there, and they looked towards Sodom. I was wondering, could any American city survive such a gaze? How about any Nigerian city? How about any Mexican city or Swiss city? How could even an individual household survive such scrutiny? Of course we couldn't. And then he reiterates this wonderful covenant to Abraham that surely you will become a great and mighty nation, and all nations of the earth will be blessed in you. And for I have chosen him to keep the way of the Lord, even though he does it very, very imperfectly. So the good news is, yes, you've got God's attention and his favor and his help and his grace. The bad news is nobody does this particularly well. Even though it's mentioned as a conditional relationship, thank goodness that it's not, because we can't walk with him in such a perfect way that we earn anything. So we need his grace even in our walking. So we hear again that Abraham has this unique role to fill amongst all the families of God on earth. And the Lord is asking, well, how much is it beneficial for him to know? Should he know about the consequences of sin? How much of the ways of righteousness and accountability and punishment and the consequences of humans should be disclosed to the humans? So he does this by talking about Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, the outcry against the righteousness of God is great, and that outcry first came to the Lord. And the Lord says, your sin is very grave. And he says, I will go down and see. So it's not like, hey, a casual thing. No, it's a careful inquiry and examination and scrutiny to see whether they've made a complete end and whether they deserve destruction and whether they're on my last nerve. So our response isn't, hey, wow, how could you utterly destroy this place without even checking it out? Really, what the conclusion of today is, how could you not destroy Sodom and Gomorrah? So it's going to answer the question today is God just, and is he unjust by being unthorough? So the scrutiny here, it wasn't that he lacks insight, it's that we lack the appreciation for his thorough inquiry. He doesn't have to go down to Sodom and Gomorrah. He's showing us that he's being a God of being careful scrutiny. And it's important for us to see his care and his complete searchings. So we can say at the end of this, you are the God who carefully sees. All right, so this is an evaluation that no one can complain about the conclusions by saying it's incomplete. If the Lord had only looked more closely, then Sodom would have been vindicated. No. So now we may not like that there's a judgment that takes place. We may not like that there's a judge who is not us, but we cannot complain about the accuracy of the inquiry. So we have a God who says, I have heard, so I will see. I will go down. I will set out. I will visit, and I will know. So this is an inquiry of perfect accuracy. It is a full assessment and complete judgment. So, let's just drill this home. What happens when the Lord and his angels look at us? Does he see family? Does he see characteristics of his people of righteousness and judgment? Does he find those who are keeping the way of the Lord? So what if the Lord looks at us with perfect accuracy? So today's lesson, I think, emphasizes this one fact about God. So it's a subset of, is God just? And is he unjust? Well, we're making an accusation against God here today a little bit. Is he unjust by being unthorough? And he's describing, saying, no, I see Sodom. I've heard about Sodom and Gomorrah, and I've heard it, and I'm going to go down, I'm going to see, I'm going to set out, I'm going to visit, and I'm going to know. The point is that God is thorough in his judgment. Who can stand? Thanks for listening.